the underlying cause of their symptoms so that they can find wellness. But that's not what I'm here today to talk about, wellness. No, I'm here today because I am pissed off. And I am tired of watching governments take away our medical freedoms. You know, I went to bed one night in a Democratic Michigan. I woke up the next day to find that my governor had taken power for herself, declaring herself the sole proprietor of life in Michigan, rendering our elected Congress completely or nearly completely useless, and unfortunately, a state in which they remain. So the governor, in all defense, she did this because she wanted to protect the people of Michigan using the best science available. So she said. When does the best science available tell you the way to manage a pandemic is to lock up the healthy people who are at essentially no risk from this disease and intentionally expose those at greatest risk? What good science tells you is you let healthy people get the disease, get immune to this, use that immunity to protect the people who are at risk. Is that what she did? I don't think so. What good science never tells you to do is to expose the very people that are most at risk from this disease. And yet, that is what our governor did. By executive order, she dictated that all COVID-positive nursing home residents discharged from hospitals have to be taken back to their nursing home. A nursing home in which they cannot be isolated. A nursing home in which there is not adequate personal protective equipment. And a nursing home in which science has told you if you introduce one patient with COVID, that nursing home will have about 85 to 86% of those patients getting COVID. As a result, over 2,000 nursing home residents died of COVID in the state of Michigan. Fully 1/3 of all the deaths in Michigan were in nursing home residents. Hospitals that were near these nursing homes found themselves overwhelmed by these sick elderly people. Yes, somebody needs to investigate this. Somebody needs to stop this. She still has power. You know, Governor Cuomo did the same thing in New York, but after 3 weeks, he figured out what a boneheaded idea it was, and he rescinded his order. Not our governor. She doubled down. That's another story, my friend. That's another story. Listen, if we know anything about COVID, it's that it is deadly to elderly people that have comorbid conditions, i.e. nursing home residents. We know that the median age of death in Michigan, that means the death rate, the age at which at least 50% of these people are at, was 78. 50% or more of people that died of COVID were 78 or older. And she did nothing to protect those people. But now we're faced once again with this idea of medical mandates and restrictions on our freedoms. The same governor that made this mess has hired an army of Gestapo agents to go out and call you and knock on your door and say, oh, by the way, you may have been exposed to somebody that may have been exposed to somebody who didn't have any symptoms, but they tested positive for COVID, and now you need to lock yourself down for 14 days and give up all your freedoms. And if ever they do come up with a vaccine for COVID, it will probably be mandated. You want your kids to go to school? Do you want a driver's license? Do you want to get on an airplane? You're going to have to show evidence of this vaccination. Who decided that it was a good idea to give up the personal sovereignty that was laid out in the Declaration of Independence and guaranteed by our Constitution? And all this for a virus that has a death rate, according to the CDC, of 0.26%. 6%. I am not minimizing anybody that has died from this virus, anybody that has suffered from this virus. It has been a horrible thing for some people. But this happens every year. We always have people that die of infectious diseases in the United States, tens and hundreds of thousands of people. Since when did this virus rise to the level that it's time to destroy our Constitution and our personal rights? Well, let's take a look at the track record of some of the medical mandates that most of us know a lot about. The vaccine mandates. Because of the way we're trained as doctors, okay, we're pretty much brainwashed. The gurus tell us what to do. We accept it. We learn early on. Don't question the gurus. We're all sleep deprived. Everybody around us is saying the same thing over and over again. That's called brainwashing. Even once we get out of our training into medical practice, we don't have the time to go home at night and investigate everything we do. We have to trust the experts to tell us what to do. And because of that, you have a whole bunch of doctors that believe that vaccines have all been through inert, placebo-controlled, double-blind, multi-center, large studies before they're ever approved by the FDA or put on the schedule by the Advisory Committee of Immunization Practices, the ACIP. Most physicians believe that vaccine injuries are rare, maybe 1 in a million, and that vaccines have been the savior of mankind. But when you do the research, you find none of that is true. Vaccine science is a joke. Vaccine safety studies compare one vaccine to another vaccine, or a vaccine to some of the toxic ingredients that are in vaccines. There's never been a vaccine that has gone through a pre-licensure, inert placebo, double-blind controlled study, ever.
Do the study!
So, the CDC, in order to deal with this, because they know there's a problem here, they created the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS, in 1988. VAERS is also a joke. 2011 study from Harvard said less than 1% of all injuries are reported to VAERS. There are doctors out there that give thousands of vaccines a year who have never reported a single injury to VAERS. So the CDC also set up something called the Vaccine Safety Data Link. This is real-time access to about 10 million medical records so they can see signals of injury. They can go in and say, hey, is this causing that? But after a couple of private physicians used the VSD to show that there was a link between DPT and autism, the CDC took that away from us, made it a private company, outside the reach of FOIA requests and individual research. But make no mistake about it, people are injured by vaccines. I have seen it with my own eyes. I've seen healthy, bright-eyed, clean-skinned, happy, great eye content babies and toddlers disappear, become glassy-eyed, eczematous, bloaty belly, dark circles under the eyes, all because of one or more vaccines. I've seen adolescents, usually straight-A students, great athletes, who all of a sudden can't walk. They have no coordination. They can't stand up. They have brain fog. They have panic attacks and anxiety when they never had it before after receiving an HPV vaccine. And I've seen adults who lose strength in their arm or their leg after receiving a flu vaccine and spend an entire year rehabbing themselves back to almost where they were before, only to be told by their employer that if they wanted a job, they had to get another flu shot. So, in response to all these growing concerns over vaccine safety, in 2012, Congress tasked the Institute of Medicine, these are a bunch of super geniuses on vaccines, to answer the question, is our vaccine schedule safe? Do we have healthier children because we follow this vaccine schedule? Simple question. Well, in 2013, they published a report that said, I don't know. Why? Because there has never been a vaxxed versus unvaxxed study, and they admonished the CDC for not doing one. So in response, the CDC convened their group of experts to study whether you could do something like that, a vax versus unvax study, in an ethical way using existing databases like the VSD. Makes sense. So they published their report in 2015 and said, yep, this is how you can do it. They even gave a specific example of how to do a study to see, does the vaccine schedule increase your risk of asthma? Reasonable question. What's happened? Sorry, at this point I'd try to do chirping of crickets, but I'm not very good at that. Nothing. That's what's happened. We have had 2 small private studies that have been published since then, comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated children. And what they found was that vaccinated children had higher rates of allergies, asthma, eczema, ear infections, ADHD, and yes, Virginia, autism. This is what the government is mandating. Now, you add in a COVID vaccine that's going to be rushed into production without any real safety testing, like there ever was on any other vaccine, and you know this is going to be a disaster. We are all terrified about what this vaccine is going to do to the people's immune systems. We also know this vaccine is not going to be tested on the elderly. It's not going to be tested on the immunocompromised. It's not going to be tested on the sick. It's going to be tested on healthy volunteers, and then it's going to be recommended to everyone. And remember, almost everyone that gets this disease either has no symptoms or minimal symptoms. It's a small percentage of people that get sick, and even less that die. They're going to be mandating this vaccine to hundreds of millions of people, most of whom will have no risk from the disease, without having any idea what this vaccine is going to do to those people over the long run. You can't determine an outcome like autoimmunity because it takes months to years to develop. You can't figure that out if you spent an entirety of 6 months developing your damn vaccine. If you're ever in doubt of the junk science that they use to create our vaccine schedule, I challenge each and every one of you to come with me to the next ASAP meeting. It's a joke. I have watched them determine that a vaccine doesn't work. The pneumonia vaccine doesn't work. They didn't take it off the schedule. They said they'd leave it up to the doctor's discretion. Are you kidding me? We assume that if they have it on the schedule, it's safe and effective. We don't have time to go out and do research on whether a vaccine is safe and effective. Some of us do. I've seen them compare a flu vaccine, not to another flu vaccine, this is a brand new vaccine, to determine whether they should approve it. Okay, they didn't compare it to another flu vaccine to determine how well it worked. No, they compared it to the Tdap vaccine, and guess what? It prevented the flu better than a Tdap vaccine. Wow! If you're gonna do something completely irrelevant like that, why don't you use an inert saline placebo? Oh, because that might hide all the side effects. I'm a bitter man. All right, so we stand on a crossroads in our history right now. The you-know-what is gonna be hitting the fan, and we need to do something about that. Make no mistake, we are at war. We are at war with a pharmaceutical industry that wants to profit at the cost of our health and the health of our children. A pharmaceutical industry whose entire purpose, this is their stated purpose, I'm not making it up, to have us all dependent on pharmaceuticals, at least 3 each. That's somebody else, my friend. This is a pharmaceutical industry that says, hey, don't worry about that autoimmune disorder you got from our COVID vaccine, because guess what? We have drugs for that. We're at war with the press that is controlled by that pharmaceutical industry. Don't believe me? Watch any news show and see what advertisements you're finding on that. They're gonna be for pharmaceuticals. What they want is everybody to be terrified. Everybody to be terrified. Why? Because it makes a population a lot more docile and easier to control. And worst of all, we're at war with our own legislators and public servants. It should never be this way. They serve at our pleasure. The founding fathers set up our government to make our government afraid of its citizens, not the other way around. If we don't take up and continue this fight against medical mandates, we will lose the freedoms that have defined this country. There should be 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people here worried about this. It's time to wake them up. And I'm going to ask you, because I know that you are the ones that are going to lead this forward. I ask you, no matter the odds, never give up. Never give up. Don't forget what we're fighting for. We are sovereign citizens of this state and this nation. No one should ever be able to mandate what is injected into our bodies or the bodies of our children. Where there is a risk, there must be a choice. Keep fighting!